January 23rd, 2018, work session of Hapeville Mayor and Council.
Oh, okay. So the 4th is the
Pro Bowl is this weekend.
There's a lot of hard plays. Yeah. You guys had a meeting right before this. We did.
I messed up something right here. My best friend. I don't wrap it all. Well, and it does remind me of it.
This probably was
It is. Well, part of it isn't. Part of the hurting me is that I fix this part independently of this part. Like doing this doesn't hurt. Doing this hurts. So this reminds me to do the whole. Well, then the problem is I've done something to my Heather's sitting here. But I'll see. The problem is my printer at my desk is on my left side. And my printer's on
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We made some sound system adjustments, so hopefully you can hear. I know you hear everybody else better than you hear me. I think we probably need to let the chief know. I think this microphone may need to be replaced. There's issues with this. The adjustments that I made tonight didn't seem to fix, but I think we've got everybody else tuned in properly tonight. So thank you so much for coming out for our January 23rd work session. Welcome everyone, and I would like to welcome our State House of Representative, Mr. David Dreyer, who's joined us tonight. I asked if he'd like to come forward and say a few words for us, David. Thank you. Hit that button until it goes green, if you don't mind, and you'll be in good shape. Thank you. If you would, if you got a cell phone, if you would check it, make sure it's on silent, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hallman and City Council members. It's great to be in Hapeville, as always. Just wanted to give you a quick update on what's going on at the Capitol this legislative session. So we're moving pretty quickly. Some of the bigger overriding things are an adoption bill. Our adoption bill has not been updated since the 70s or the 80s. The real fight on that is, can we get a clean adoption bill that just does what we want it to do without any discriminatory provisions put in it? It's urgent that we do this. There are a lot of kids lingering in foster care that cannot be adopted, that need to be adopted. Obviously, the budget is going on. We have a little bit of a handicap doing that. No one understands how the federal tax law will impact our revenues. Feds don't realize it either, so we're trying to figure that out, but we're doing the best we can. I am personally working on a couple bills. One is to change the death penalty process for people with intellectual disability bills to make it a little more humane. I'm also working on some affordable housing initiatives and a bill called Dignity for Incarcerated Women that would help mothers in prison be closer to their families and phase male guards out of women's showers. So just a couple things like that. But I always want to know what's going on here. I always want to help. We've been asked to help with a couple things, and I'm more than happy to help with those.
We're going to be talking about the hotel motel tax in a moment. Of course, we're going to ask for your help on that.
Yes.
Also, there are a couple of things that we're concerned about. Number one, that there be some kind of reform when it comes to property valuations.
Yes.
I was at Mayor's Day this weekend and went to the finance briefing, and they said it's going to be a couple of years before we see any meaningful reform on that. That's killing our cities. The property digest dropped so fast, and then Fulton County overcorrected, which created, as we all know, the PR nightmare, and then they rolled everything back. But everybody's expecting us to run a city when our revenue on the average average residential tax bill is about half of what it was in 2006, 2007. So that's one thing. The second thing is Airbnb. We talked about that a little bit earlier, and I know that's a controversial subject as well, but we're concerned about that, so we create a level playing field for our hotel motel operators.
On the property taxes, I would love to dialogue and see what we can do. It's really, it's hard right now because you had such a steep decline, and in just a few pockets of Fulton County, the acceleration is so fast that you've got two ends of the spectrum going on. So whatever we need to do to tailor it for the city of Hapeville and Hapeville residents, I'm happy to work on. As well as with the Airbnb stuff, let's talk about that. I'd like to know how I can help. I also work a lot with Senator Orrick, who is the senator for this area. She's got another meeting tonight, but I speak with her regularly, and we speak regularly about Hapeville. So we're both here to help, and we'd like to help as much as we can.
Awesome.
Thank you.
While we have him, anyone have anything they'd like to say today?
If you got time, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Council? Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your Thanks.
All right, at this time, we had a 5 p.m. meeting where we had a more formal presentation of this, but there's some discussion about the city looking at a new hotel motel tax designation, with some discussion also from going from 7% rate to an 8% rate. And like I say, we had a more detailed presentation at 5, but I've asked DCA if they would give us a thumbnail sketch. So Tyler gives a little thumbnail sketch of what we're talking about. By Tyler Remville from Department of Community Affairs.
First and foremost, thank you to the mayor and council for having us down today to go through this presentation. Thanks for the hospitality of everyone who attended the 5 o'clock meeting. Hopefully that brought some clarity to a very complicated section of state code for you. Currently, the city of Hapeville is under what we call a remnant or retired paragraph of hotel motel tax authorization. And that 7% that's collected has a specific set of restrictions that come along with how those funds can be used. Currently, the city is entertaining the idea of increasing that to an 8% tax, which would come with a different set of spending restrictions. And we went through the details of what exactly those restrictions would look like. The process for moving forward with that would be the adoption of a resolution by the city council and mayor to request that the General Assembly delegation, Representative Dreyer, for instance, introduce a local act in the General Assembly that would subsequently empower the mayor and council to pass an ordinance that would change that tax rate to 8%. If the city wants to change the restrictions that are on spending, they would have to, at the rates of 6%, 7%, and 8%, any of those would have to go through an act by the General Assembly. The General Assembly Act does not in itself change the tax rate or change the ordinance that exists. The finish line, so to speak, of that process would be a final ordinance adopted by the mayor and council after the local act is passed by the General Assembly and then signed by the governor. So the nuts and bolts of that is the restrictions on spending would change with the change of a 7% hotel motel tax currently in place to an 8% that is being entertained.
I'll open the floor. I do see David out here from the Hilton. So I'll open the floor if anybody has any questions or comments regarding that.
Probably have some comments, Mayor, I think.
Sure. Thank you.
So, Mayor, Council, thanks for addressing this issue. Interesting today at the Capitol was tourism. And a lot of people tell you is governor candidates were there today, and
Make sure the green button's
Yeah,
pressed.
thank you.
It's on.
can you hear me?
Yeah, just hold it a little closer if you would.
Sorry. I'm not going to be hosting the Oscars anytime soon. So, but, you know, I thought one of the big numbers today we heard was that tourism is a $60.8 billion industry in Georgia, and it creates 450,000 jobs in the state. So So it's an important issue. But specifically, I know you want my comments on the 8% raise. And these comments, I will say, I have not had an opportunity. Our local hotel association meets this Thursday, and it's a topic on our agenda to discuss it. So I have not had an opportunity to speak with any of the other hoteliers and people on there. I think we have 10 hotels at this time with a couple more on deck to open or be developed. So, but I think our thoughts as Hilton and as our ownership, you know, if it strengthens the city of Hapeville, particularly the downtown area. I know that one of the specific needs is to renovate our theater, and we are in support of that. I think I've expressed separately that some of the other things that I've heard, perhaps a convention or conference center, we would not be in support of that. And I think that's something for private industry. It's particularly, you know, where do you put it where it doesn't give one hotel an advantage over another, right? That's the issue there. But I think when we spend money to, you know, we're going to tax our visitors, right? We want to support, and we're strong supporters of the Atlanta Airport District, which is the marketing arm that markets to the entire airport district. And we've already seen some success since the council and the mayor agreed with the city to be part of that district last year. We've got heads and beds this January because of that association.
And that's the DMO, the destination market.
The DMO, yeah. But you know, for example, a theater, it's a catalyst to make the restaurants stronger. The restaurants allow us to market the city and our people, our groups to come here because there's things to do in downtown Hapeville. So that piece of it, we're 100% in agreement, and I wanted to share it.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Any questions on that?
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
David, one of the interesting things we learned tonight that we weren't aware of is that we might be able to create multiple DMOs, not just one DMO. So we could potentially, and this is just right off the top of our heads, but we could potentially have maybe a DMO comprised of hotel operators that could specifically market your hotels. So that's an interesting thought that came up tonight that we weren't aware of, that we could split that DMO money. So, just a thought. Thank you. All right, any other comments on the hotel motel tax, since we've got the floor open for that? Rob?
Rob Matt, 500 King. Under the current motel tax law, 48-1351 says that, you know, you must provide
I think some folks are trying to hear you out in the
Microphone.
microphone.
Yes, thank you.
under the
It's on.
under the current.
Check for the green light.
Jeez.
There you go.
Okay. Under the current hotel motel tax law, 48-13-51 says that you know, we must provide only a audit verification of use of compliance with authorization requirements. My question is, does the city of Hapeville need to have a separate, complete financial audit each year with this DMO?
Not to my knowledge. No, it would be part of our regular financial reporting to file the compliance reports with DCA. And then the DMO handles their own reporting.
Okay, because, you know, the state has their own interpretation under a law, and then the federal government has their own interpretation under the law also. They're two separate laws.
Correct.
I think speaking to what you're talking about, though, it might be pertinent, like if we do pass this as a body, to particularly look into possibly doing a full separate account for tourism product development. So that from just an accounting perspective, if it is being reviewed by an auditor in a normal sort of review process, that it...
We contain those into its own separate fund.
Okay, wonderful.
Any other? Yes, sir.
I could respond.
Yes, please.
So just in response to that question, one of the things that we see regularly across the state, just because of the size of communities that do have a hotel motel tax and the amount of funds that go to that tourism conventions and trade shows, the TCT funds, the promotion funds that are restricted, do have to go to a 501c6 nonprofit. And those nonprofit organizations have auditing requirements of their own, as you pointed out, from the federal government, because that's an IRS designation. And then communities, Hapeville being included in that of a certain size, are required to have their own audits conducted, and the funds that come to the city are accounted for in that.
So thanks, sir. All right, any other hotel motel tax related questions? All right, we have part of the packet tonight, our Thomasville model and Brookhaven model. Is there a particular model that you guys would like to move forward with? And then, I guess the question for the attorneys, can we make this a first reading item tonight, or do we need to adopt a model and then have it as a first reading at the next meeting?
I believe the attorney submitted a edited model, correct?
Yes.
So I'm fine with that one.
Okay, so you're good with that. So
Yes, sir. I mean,
it's not on here as a first reading, so I'm
right, and the reason it's not as a first reading, Tim and I were talking about this, and that's something I should have mentioned before, but technically it's a resolution, so it doesn't require a first reading, it's just ordinance.
Right, that's right.
Of course, if council doesn't want to vote on it tonight, just wants to read it and they have discussion, that's in the council's purview, but it is not required under the code.
Well, that being said,
Are you saying that there's language that identifies which model we wanted to adopt, Thomasville or Brookhaven? I don't see that.
Yes, it was submitted further on into the packet.
Oh, again?
I believe so.
Thomasville model's chosen?
all I
Is that what I'm saying?
I see
Brookhaven comes from, I don't see
as the excerpts.
Oh, that's in the father in the back of the
No link, no link.
Resolution number blank. 97 minor.
All right, so
So is the Thomasville model, that's my question, is that what's going in our packet?
no,
But that's the only-
we've got something in the packet that apparently got added. That the link is not in the agenda that I have. So when did that come out, Tim?
It actually came up Friday night.
It's on Friday.
Under the consent agenda, so you guys.
Oh, it's in the consent agenda. Okay.
Okay, I see, I have both the models now, I see the Brookhaven. That was the model
So
that
this
I
was just a carry.
had preferred.
So we're
Are
going to
we-
act on this in the consent.
Are we asking to,
No, never
for a
mind.
preference in the
Never
model
mind.
or no?
Never mind.
Okay.
Brain lapse.
I do have a question though, since we're in the discussion of that. It being a resolution versus a first and second reading. I mean, it was my desire if we had to do a second reading with respect to the General Assembly's sort of tight schedule. They end this month with 10 days, and February 6th would probably be around day 14 or day 15, with crossover day being day 20. It gives us a tight schedule to work with unless if we're doing a second reading.
We don't have to, it's just a resolution, it's not an ordinance, so we're good. So I can move forward tonight if approved in the consent.
Thank you.
All right, so that closes everything up on hotel motel tax, and we'll get back to that in a moment in our consent agenda. All right, with that being said, we'll take general comments at the end of the meeting, but I'll open the floor for comments regarding agenda items. And I'll start on my right if anyone has any questions regarding agenda items. And my left, Charlotte.
Where'd you get it to turn green? I'd like to direct some comments to item 7.2, the personnel board duties. Travis asked me this question at the last council meeting. Do we need a personnel board? You haven't met in so long, he said. So I went back to my files. I go back to 2005. That was the first appointment I had to do anything with the city. And
Remember it well.
they wouldn't let me do anything else. But there were 3 of us, And I counted from my records, how many times we met. It's about 13 years. And in those 13 years, we had 10 hearings. They ranged from 0 a year to 3 a year. The last one was, I wrote down it was 2013. So we haven't had a personnel board meeting since 2013. And I just wanted to share with you a couple of observations since I've been on that board for so long. Looking at what you're talking about, designating a third party, they wouldn't have anything to do like we didn't have anything to do. But the real question for me is why, if you're going to do that, if you're going to designate someone to hear the cases, then why have a board also?
Because it's called for right now, and until we change the policy, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim.
That's coming.
Okay.
The employee handbook.
Right, the employee handbook calls for it. Until that gets changed, we have to keep it live.
I did check to see what kind of age the employee handbook was that we've been using, and it's dated 1994. So it's probably about time to think about getting it updated.
It's in
It's
process.
about time now. We actually, if we don't have it on in February, we'll have it on the 1st March agenda because we're pretty close to having it updated.
The other thing I wanted to mention is, in making a decision, that board has been severely limited in what they can do. And my experience was that employees, by the way, I stayed with that board, not because I wanted to, but because I thought it was so important for employees to have that option. And no one wants to do that job
It's a tough job.
because it's not fun. So if you pass something that says you can only serve on 2 boards, I will resign from that because I have 2 boards I want to be on. But just note that I stuck with it because I thought it was important. And what I found was when the employees came in, they really didn't understand what was possible. They expected a miracle, and we couldn't perform miracles for them. It's very clear, and I'm just going to read this, it's real short. We can either reverse or affirm a decision by the appropriate person with the city. And our instructions read something like this. The Personnel Board may reverse the decision of the appointing authority only on the finding that it was based on error of fact or was motivated by personal, religious, or political reasons. And that is very, very restrictive. And I just found that employees didn't realize that it was that restrictive.
That's a good point.
So, for what it's worth.
All right, any other comments or questions on agenda items? Okay, there being none, we'll get into a public hearing. This is item 6, Roman numeral 1. This is a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is consideration and action on a 2018 alcohol beverage license for a restaurant for Uptown Comedy Club or Uptown Comedy Corner at 397 North Central Avenue, Hapeville. The applicant is Angelo Sykes. The agent is Angelo Sykes. The address is 397 North Central Avenue. The parcel ID is 1400600600034. All departmental reports have been received, and staff has no questions or motions or concerns with this application at this time. Staff recommends approval. At this time, I will open the floor to the applicant, if the applicant would like to speak to this application, or a representative of the applicant. If you come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Angelo Sykes, address 5488 Legacy Trail, Douglasville, Georgia. We're Uptown Comedy Corner. We're been located downtown Atlanta for the last 12 plus years. They happen to be building condos at our current, well, now past location. So it was forced us to find a new location, and we found this particular location that fit all of our needs for what we want to do for our business. And we're looking forward to bringing comedy to Hapeville, Georgia.
Thanks, sir.
We need some comedy.
2 council meetings a month already.
No drama.
Well, if there are questions later, we may call you back. Okay, any other comments from anyone representing the applicant? Okay. All right, there being none, I will open the floor at this time. Citizen comments either for or against this application. Now, we're gonna have to follow the strict rules of the public hearing because this is a public hearing. And it involves a licensing feature of government, so I want to make sure we adhere to the rules. So when I'm going to call on one side of the room to make comments, and I'm going to call on the other side. At that point, the public comments are done at that point. So if you're on one side and you want to make a comment, make sure you get it in while that side of the room is making comments, just so we can make sure the process is fair. So that being said, I will open the floor up on my left-hand side of the room for comments either for or against this application. And the right-hand side of the room. Yes, ma'am.
I think laughter's great medicine. Bring it on.
You have to come forward and state your name and address for the record.
But you can laugh about it.
Okay.
Sorry, Heather.
Okay, Bob.
Heather Glance, 720 North Avenue. I just think laughter is great medicine, and we need some laughter around here, so sounds good to me. That's just my opinion.
All right, any other comments for or against on the right-hand side of the room? Mr. Mike?
Well, now, can I have a, not for, I just want to, who is Mr. Levinson?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Who is Mr. Levinson?
He's the owner of the property, right?
Okay,
Judge Davis.
thank you.
All right, any other comments for or against on the right-hand side? Okay, I'll open it up to staff comments. Any staff comments?
None from staff.
Council? Any comments or questions?
Yes. Who wants to start?
Go ahead.
All right. Microphone. All right. Thanks for being here, Angela. And these can be directed at the applicant.
Correct. Yes.
Just took a few notes. So.
Are you going to be asking him questions directly?
If that's okay.
Angela, if you would come back to the podium again, just so everybody can hear the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Try to take diligent notes. Some of them are critiques of our own forms as well, but these are questions that are specifically for you. So, question 29, has any alcohol beverage business in which you hold or have held a financial interest or have been employed ever been cited for any violation for the rules and regulations of the State Revenue Commissioner relating to the sale and distribution of distilled spirits? You answered no. I just wanted to, I guess, make sure again that that's correct.
No,
Okay.
never been cited for anything.
All right. Give me 1 second. $397 is the address listed by the applicant as the legal applicant in all of the paperwork. And give me 1 second to read my chicken scratch. And this might be a question partially for him with his lease agreement, but also a legal question as well. The lease agreement states it's for 6 years, 60 months, or 5 years, 5 years, 60 months. Thanks. Are alcohol license granted on a fiscal year basis or a calendar year?
Calendar year, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that if y'all were granted one, that it's not running out at a different time. And the question is, as well as if they are on a calendar year and say a lease for any applicant ended at a time that was not the end of December, do we prorate that?
think what happens is they actually have to pay the full amount for the year, and then if they close, I believe, then we give them a refund at the end.
Okay.
They can come to council requesting a refund. We've added that as a license where they have to approach council requesting a refund of a pro rata portion of the license.
In reviewing the previous alcohol code versus current code, square footage requirement for previous alcohol code was abolished. And this is more of a legal question later, so I'll ask that to respect your time since you're here. It was listed as Uptown Comedy Corner on all of the applications, but I did see on the leasehold agreement that it was listed as Uptown Comedy Club and Lounge. Is the correct name for, I guess, purposes of the city? Which one would it be?
Uptown Comedy Corner.
Okay. Lease 19, your lease agreement 19 sub A in the sublease section gives language to intent to sublease, and it fully sort of binds that conversation between you and Mr. Levinson, and it refers to banquet A and banquet B. Is it your intent to use both of banquet A and banquet B in your leasehold agreement as part of your restaurant?
That's correct. One side of it, I guess, I don't know how it is, but the middle part is going to be strictly the restaurant, 7 days a week, serving lunch and dinner. The A part will be Uptown Comedy Corner, just strictly for the comedy.
Okay, and the airport event center is also included in the lease?
It's included in the lease, but it's separate from Uptown Comedy Corner altogether.
Okay.
So strictly as an airport event center.
Got that. So question to staff as it relates to the square footage of both buildings put together in the leasehold, they have about 17 to 18,000. My question with regards to shared parking, it was listed that there were 350 spots. By UV code, one parking spot was required by per 1,000 square feet for a restaurant, as I understand it in the UV code. 3, thank you. Still, just with respect to parking, is the 350 parking spots a shared parking between the 397 and the other addresses?
The event center has 83 parking spaces for its use only.
For its use only?
The event center, yes, sir.
And then the other one has 350?
Right. The overall Uptown Comedy Corner use would be 350. The event center has 83 spots that's kind of designated for that.
Okay. I guess this is a question for our legal staff. In questions 25 through 27 on the applicant form, does this sort of also hold as a binding to the landlord or the landlord's broker? I mean, I see we had that filled out as paperwork just for the business owner.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So we have questions 25 through 27.
Yes, sir.
Just wondering, are those questions only intently asked in an alcohol application? And please forgive me for my ignorance, y'all. This is our first time doing this, so I'm just asking as much as I can to get the knowledge as well. 25 through 27, we specifically asked that of Angelo and his business partners. Is there anything in the code that would sort of state that we also have to do that for the landlord or any other interested parties involved with the property?
Not that I'm aware of, without consulting the entire code at this point, but I would say that I believe that those questions were developed and they were in there just as a safeguard in case there had been incidents with an owner in the past. So
Okay.
mayor and council and the city staff would be aware of that. But I don't believe.
In consulting the code, I didn't see anything else either. Just wanted to.
I think it's just subject to the applicant.
Right. I don't believe that there is.
Okay. I can read one section real quick. I apologize as I flip through. It's a lot of paper, Shell. Okay, doesn't have a form number, but City of Hapeville document alcohol license establishment planning and zone form. The grade section in the middle part. That's the most professional way to say it. Staff use only. The question that I had with regards to the asterisk. Asterisk, there is an existing occupational tax permit for this address which allows the increased size in reference to the 6,000 square feet. Is that due to a prior restaurant and now the new restaurant? So it's sort of like the same thing as if a mechanic shop shut down and immediately within a certain time period became a mechanic shop again.
That's correct. So there's an existing business license occupational tax permit for a restaurant of that size.
Okay.
That is basically non-conforming.
All right. That was my understanding. I just wanted to check. And had the honor of joining my colleague, Dr. Adams, to come see the facility, I believe last week. I believe you stated that there was a ticket booth and sort of ... Does that lead to an age restriction is my question. And if so, is that age restriction to basically allow efficiency of like letting in only 21-year-olds, or will it be 18 and 20-year-old mixed?
We're 21 and up for us now.
21 and up. All right.
Card at the door.
Okay. And lastly, and hopefully I'm not stealing thunder from other people's questions, the alcohol establishment code enforcement inspection form lists additional violations noted. Interior illumination dash, it is difficult to see inside the premises from the front parking lot due to the awning overhanging cast shadow on windows. There is no tint on the windows, parentheses previously removed, and parentheses period. From what it still looks like there's tinting, so maybe I'm just a bad judgment on that, but it has been removed, the tint?
It was removed prior to us even taking the lease or anything. It was already removed. We haven't had to remove anything, but we would have actual blinds over those windows for the comedy show, because couldn't have light coming in for the show. That's kind of a set kind of tone for the room. But anything that they removed was previously.
Is there going to be outside seating?
Not for the show. There'll be, the outside area be more of a waiting area, for lack of better words. If we were coming to the second show on the weekends,
Okay.
they kind of way out there, but it'd just be strictly for that.
I mean, from a public safety perspective, since they did state that it is difficult to see inside the premises with the overhang, would y'all object to removing the overhang?
It's not my property to remove it. I would imagine that would be consultative.
That's true. That's a good question. Good point. I think that's all my questions at the moment. I might have one later about a follow-up to parking, but thank you.
Just to follow back up what Travis said, that is listed as far as the code enforcement inspection as an additional violation. So with that being listed as an additional violation, that the overhang provides a difficult interior illumination, I think that would be prudent that you would take that back to the owner in order for us to have that visibility within that particular restaurant.
Yes, sir.
Also, are the cameras working inside of that facility?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you provide a floor plan to the city?
Well, we provided one that was already there, but because it had a previous certificate of occupancy, they went with the original, the quote that was already. Are you talking about the showroom, or are you talking about the actual facility?
For the entire facility, the showroom, the A, B side, all of that?
Yes, sir. For the actual plan of the entire facility is
Okay. So, and the reason why I asked that question is I wanted to actually, I came there to visit to get an actual visualization of the actual establishment itself. Looks like you guys have 2 bars in there, correct?
correct.
I read something inside of the alcohol ordinances. It's very difficult to understand nevertheless. About each consumption area should have its own license, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that is more geared for a hotel.
Okay.
Like the Hilton, for example, has multiple restaurants within the hotel. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it is. So that's more for either a hotel or a classic. I don't know if council recalls, but when I was growing up, for example, you would have restaurants and you would have an attached lounge. The lounge would require a separate alcohol or alcohol license as opposed to the actual restaurant. Same kind of theory applies to the hotels. If you have a lounge, you also have a restaurant. You have an upstairs lounge, that kind of thing. Each individual bar area, for lack of a better term, would require a separate license.
Okay, but correct me if I'm wrong, as I go back, the comedy club has a bar in it, and then he's gonna have a lounge too. So that pretty much encompasses what you just stated.
It does if it's a separate, I'm trying to think of how to explain this. With the lounge area is gonna be inside your facility, correct?
Correct.
Okay. There's gonna be doors separating the facility? The two
Door.
facilities?
There's a door that separates.
Okay. When you're serving alcohol, my understanding was that they were gonna be serving alcohol ancillary food in the main area. Is that correct?
That's
So we
correct.
have a kitchen that's gonna be open the
That's
entire
correct.
time. Then, from what we spoke about with the Alcohol Review Board, I believe that would qualify since they are doing it with food. The license is okay since it's all under one roof. I'm sorry if I didn't explain it before, not under one roof, but it's all in one facility, if that makes any sense. It's not you have 3 different bars and locations in congruity with a hotel. It's that you have a restaurant and also next to it a lounge. So my example before was poor, but in that particular case, under one roof, I believe that you would only need 1 alcohol license.
For a better understanding for myself, I prefer to have more specific clarity
Okay.
for that.
And just if I can interject, I know City of Atlanta has a similar ordinance, and I've worked in a facility that had several bars under one roof, and they did require 2 separate licenses. And I think, just to be safe, to me, if they're in 2 separate rooms, and you're saying the restaurant's gonna be separate from the actual club, but food will be served from the restaurant, but they're 2 separate rooms. It seems like it's 2 separate
The
bars
same
as
would
well.
apply for any place that had, Corner Tavern comes to mind, they've got an outside area, they serve food from an inside restaurant outside. It all falls under the same footprint, so with that example, then they would be out of compliance as well as other establishments, based upon that example. So, just.
I think it's something that's worth looking into at least.
Any other questions?
No.
I'm only really interested in, staff can rein me in if I step out of bounds. I would like to ask about what your plan for security. I'm sure you have a plan inside the facility. I would wonder about the parking lot itself. The city of Hapeville is like other metro areas have had instances in our public parking lots and some private parking lots of the smash and grab incidents, things of that nature. And I wondered if your management team had given thoughts to parking lot security.
Yes, sir. We intend to use a valet company. And with that valet company, they have a security officer they keep in the lot. We've already met with them a couple times and kind of mapped out the lot and how egress would go through. And so we'll have security in the parking lot. We're also looking at, I met with Officer Carroll here a week or so ago and discussed the opportunity to bring in, handle somebody from that crew to kind of assist us particularly on the weekends.
Are you valet parking? Is that the plan?
Yes, sir.
Can I have a follow-up question to that then? Per the code, and I don't have the exact wording correct, but basically the sales report that must be submitted on a monthly basis, how does the report distinguish revenue between revenue accrued inside of the walls, i.e. food, alcohol, comedy, and that accrued by a LLC that's not the same as the applicant? So essentially, if you're doing a valet situation, there's usually either a profit sharing where you're getting 50, I'm getting 50, or 100-0. But my question to staff is, if the answer is readily available, is when that revenue is accrued via on premises, does that also get reported as part of sales?
If we're talking about revenue for the valet company, they should have a separate business license, separate reporting, and that doesn't report to us as part of the percentage of the sale, percentage revenue.
All right.
All the rest, any other questions?
No, that's
Councilman Alexander?
Are there actually 350 paid spots?
There are 287 paid spots. The way the valet, you add 20% from whatever number of spots you have, and that's the number of spots you actually get. So that's why it's.
So it has a capacity to park 350 cars, but there's not.
That's a minimum, and that's 350 would be a smaller amount.
And it's valet only?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, especially on the weekends, we want to do valet. We want to be able to have a control like that. For the most part, we have a valet.
I'm just asking because I live walking distance, and I know there's a Catholic church that has a pretty high attendance rate, and parking over there is already pretty much a mess. It can be a hazard sometimes. And so the idea of overflow parking is a concern for me. I know it's a concern for other people in the neighborhood, and I want to know what measures you're going to take to discourage people from parking on the street at all, or the valet. The people at the valet company see people parking on the street, let them know that it's valet only. Are you willing to contract with a booting company or a tow company to ensure that your customers aren't parking on the streets?
I mean, I would have no issue with that at all. I mean, we would definitely be encouraging all of our customers to park in the lot. We definitely encourage anyone to park on the street. Our crowd, even on a great night, I can't imagine the over capacity of that particular lot. That'd be a really, really good night, but we typically, if we had 300 customers, that's still probably about 200 or so actual spaces being used. So, but we wouldn't have an issue at all with that, with hiring a booting company, just to be so. That's something that we kind of look at, as we proceed.
What would the maximum capacity be for? Because are you using the same structure? I used to go to the old one, the same structure where there's 2 shows.
Be 2 shows on Friday nights, typically 3 shows on Saturday night.
And what's the maximum seating capacity for a show?
Maximum, well, according to the fire marshal, it's like 350 for that room. But because we want to make this room really, really comfortable for our customers, we only put out a maximum of 302 seats on the floor. And that's 302 very, very comfortable seating. And it's not tight. You can actually slide your chair out and never have to bump anybody. So it's a very, very comfortable room. We want to keep it that way.
And the restaurant will be open in concert with the comedy club at the same time?
Yes, ma'am.
So if the comedy club seats a maximum of 300 and it sells out, reasonably, where would your restaurant guests park?
Same people. It's the same people.
No, if you've attended, and I'm just saying this based on my experience uptown, there's usually 2 shows or 3 shows, and they overlap. And people know that parking on Marietta was tight. So people would arrive early, and there they'd have to wait in line, but now they have an option to sit in the lounge and eat and drink. So I can foresee people arriving early and getting comfortable when there's a show already happening and their car's already parked, a sold-out show, hypothetically, and in addition to that, there are other people who need to park who are at the restaurant
I mean, again,
waiting for the next show.
right, if you look at the numbers of, 350 spots, that's the average of usually 2, minimum 2 people per vehicle. So you're still talking about a large number of 500, 600 minimum people that can actually, if you had, the overflow. So I think we still would, well maximize the numbers in terms of parking. I don't foresee that. We really looked at it pretty detailed in terms of the numbers of spaces and people. And I still think it still would fit into that overall lot. And it's still even behind the event center, there's still parking behind there, the bottom level of the event center. I mean, it's a lot of spaces. You figure the overlap we had at Marietta Street, this still is larger than that. We had 3 different areas we had to park it over there. This is still bigger than those 3 combined.
So if there's no event scheduled at the event center, you'll make use of those 83 spots as well?
Absolutely. And that's kind of why we want to be able to get the lease on that as well, kind of control that atmosphere and that parking.
Kind of get the lease, or do you already have the lease? I understood from the lease agreement that there was.
No, I was saying that's why we
okay,
negotiated the entire lease, so that we can we know what our schedule is.
All right, thanks.
One more question, sorry. There's no plans to valet park on any of those, for lack of better words, the open lots with grass or gravel that are joining the property?
If it's not part of our lease, we're not valet parking. But we will, I do like your thought about people being and make sure, of course, that's a great idea.
I have a lot of problem with Uber drivers using your lot for staging and whatnot, so it would probably behoove you to control who gets to park there.
One last tag on, is the event center 377, is that?
377.
Oh, yeah, it's all in the lease.
One other question that I have, since we're getting clarity, I've asked for clarity as far as how many actual licenses you need for actual alcohol. In the event, how feasible do you think that it would be if you were granted the alcohol license for the comedy club, to just only open that side versus and hold off on the other until we actually get clarification on that? If you're granted the license, I'm not saying you will. I'm just saying if. How do you feel about that?
How I feel about it? I mean, naturally, I would, my preference would be to be able to, if we were granted the license, to be able to function, and I guess my appeal would be to, if granted the license, to grant it as it would normally be granted, and then maybe revisit it in terms of this is what you may need to do, and if so, we will, adhere to whatever new regulations. But if, like the mayor said, they've already granted other people, my hope would be that we would get the same, if granted that license, we get the same kind of thing, and then maybe, once it's reviewed, if everybody has to change, then, we follow that same
or does it be fairly applied to other
Right.
locations?
I believe he would be out of compliance if he just had the comedy club only not serving food, because he's required to serve the food.
Right.
So, just having the comedy club only, with no food sales.
But the restaurant is inside of the comedy club
It is
area.
inside, oh, okay.
We would sell food, you know.
So the food would be available in the comedy club?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, food's a big part, food's a big part of the comedy club. That would be mine.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from council? All right, thank you, Mr. Suggs. All right, with that being said, that will close the public hearing portion of that, and this is up for consideration action, so is anyone prepared to make a motion on this item tonight?
I'll move for approval to get the motion on the table, and if there's any other discussion, it can go forward.
Motion for approval, is there a second?
Second.
Second discussion?
It's more of me just being a person that pays attention to detail and does forms for a living. I hope, like our forms in general for the city, not just for this applicant, but just for all alcohol licenses and anything, when the applicant is doing a signature to make a time date stamp as well. I know most of the planning commission documents are that way, but just as a stickler to detail to make sure that when a notary is occurring, that it's occurring at the same date. But that has no bearing on my view in this case.
Any other comments? So there's a motion on the floor and a second for approval. If there's no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries and the licenses are out. John, if you could just follow back up, if we need to clarify any language about the multiple sales points.
Yes, sir. Looking back over the definitions, to Mayor's point before about places such as short tavern and patio, patio is specifically accepted as being, under the definition of a restaurant, is specifically accepted as being an area where you do not have to have another license. Lounge is defined in the code. However, I'd like to consult with Ms. Walker with our office who wrote the code to get a little bit more clarity from her so that I can provide an answer to council. And if the comedy club will have to come back and get another license, then we can determine that at that time.
Okay.
We'll finish our recording here. This was the only thing I
right.
needed to record tonight.
We now move into our consent agenda. Item 7 on our agenda tonight, and under the consent agenda, we have...
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add section 8.2, discussion on dogwood progress and allow public comment.